Welcome to my film review of Good Boys. So this was the comedy. I saw the trailer, looked good, looked really funny from the trailer. Taken me a while to get around to actually seeing it at the cinema, and I thought it was good, but somehow it felt like I was expecting something slightly different. I don't know why, because basically the movie Superbad was a movie I loved when I was younger. I think I was a lot younger, to be fair, when Superbad came out. Absolutely loved it. Thought it was hilarious. Could totally relate to a lot of, what the lads were going through at that age. But what I found a little bit weird about Good Boys was the kids, to me, felt too young to be covering the subject matter that they were covering. It was like, I think they were supposed to be 12 years old or something. I've got a niece who's 11, she's 12 in a couple of months, and the thought of her acting and carrying on and talking about the kind of stuff that they were talking about, quite frankly, makes me want to physically spew. So yeah, that was the thing I struggled with during the movie. Finding the whole story kind of believable. Whereas Superbad, you're like, yeah, we've all been there. Totally, you can totally understand what the lads are going through. And just like Superbad, the dynamic between the three lads is good. It's believable. You can believe that they're friends, and it works. But I just, throughout the movie, particularly early on, I was just finding like what they were covering. It was like, you're too young. You need to be a couple of years older to pull off this kind of the way you're acting and what you're saying. You're just a few years too young for me to think it's plausible in my head. But maybe I'm too old. Maybe I've forgotten what it's like to be that age. Maybe nowadays people just are like that at this age. So maybe I'm out of touch. But nevertheless, the fact that they were this young did make for some hilarious comedy situations, where it's like, if they'd have been a little bit older, it wouldn't have been as funny. It was the fact that they're like 12 years old and discussing these kind of things and the words and what they were saying just made it utterly hilarious. So I actually had the pleasure of being in a cinema screening completely on my own. It's one of the biggest screens in the movie theatre as well, and nevertheless I was the only person in there. I've got to be honest, I love that. It's like having a giant living room with your own private cinema, so that was good. And it also made me feel less conscious about laughing out loud, because I don't care. There's nobody else there, and it was just me. And on that note, I literally laughed out loud to the point where if there were people in the room and they didn't laugh, you'd probably feel a little bit self-conscious, maybe a little bit embarrassed, if people weren't laughing as loudly as you. Absolute laugh out loud moments. There was probably at least 5, real pee yourself laughing, hilarity, explosion of laughter, and some even better than others. There was a couple that were, I was laughing for 20 or 30 seconds. It was that funny. So there's a couple of moments that were absolutely brilliant and really worked for me. There's a lot of the movie, you've got a smile on your face, you're grinning, maybe having a little bit of a chuckle maybe inside. So in terms of the laughter, it's supposed to be a comedy, and in that regard it did work, but I just found the whole story didn't quite fit, it felt a little bit uncomfortable, I guess, is the point. I mean, I would not want my 11-year-old niece to watch this, because I wouldn't want it to encourage that kind of behaviour and that kind of thinking. I would like to think my 11-year-old niece, even when she turns 12 in a couple of months, I'd like to think she stays a lot more innocent for a lot longer, but maybe I'm just kidding myself. So, I mean, basing this movie purely as a comedy, I've got to give it a reasonable score, because it made me laugh a hell of a lot and make me laugh massively out loud. So, it's got to get closer to an 8 than it is to a 7, but I'm struggling to even give it an 8 out of 10. I'm thinking around 7.7 is probably about fair. About 7.7 out of 10 I'm going to go with, just on the basis that, unfortunately, as good as the storyline was, found it a little bit uncomfortable. The storyline was very similar to Superbad. Obviously on my reviews I don't give any spoilers, but I don't think it's at all a spoiler for me to tell you that basically the storyline was the 3 kids loosely based around trying to get to a party, and all kinds of crazy carry-ons happen. So, it was a story that kind of felt familiar, a story that worked. The 90-minute movie flew by, passed by in a shot, it really did. So that's a good sign when the movie flies by. I think 90 minutes was about right as well. And the characters, I liked all of the characters as well, worked really well. But the storyline, as good as the storyline was, the characters were maybe just a bit too young for some of what was going on. But nevertheless, overall, it was a good movie. I'd avoid your real young kid. I mean, it was a 15 certificate. Keep it at 15. You probably don't want anyone younger than 14 to be watching this, because you just don't want them to get any stupid ideas in their head that this movie might instigate. But I think, teenagers are probably going to love this movie, I would guess. I enjoyed it. Don't think it's going to be so much for the older generation. I think the older generation might be quite disturbed, possibly. I don't know. But there was some real funny stuff in this movie. So I think you're going to like it. It's a good comedy. But, yeah, little bit, some of the stuff, a little bit questionable. Ooh, does that work? Should they be thinking that? Should they be talking about that? Should they be? I don't know. Some of it was innocence that was great, and it worked because of their youth and their innocence. Questioning the morality around certain issues was brilliant, and the fact that they were so young had a really nice innocent take on that. But yeah, I can't criticize it too much, because like I say, the fact that I thought the storyline didn't suit their age might not apply to everybody. At the end of the day, it was a funny comedy. At certain times I was absolutely laughing out loud. What more could you ask for in a comedy? So it works for me. 7.7 out of 10. I don't think you necessarily need to see this movie at the cinema, going to be honest. I mean, if like me you've got the unlimited pass and you can get yourself to the cinema, there's not a huge amount out right now. If you want to see a comedy, this definitely works. Go and see it. It's worth a chuckle, but it's equally the kind of movie that you could just as happily stream when it comes available to stream online, and it doesn't have to be seen at the cinema. And also, if you're at home watching a comedy, you burst out laughing, you don't have to worry about anybody else. This would probably have been really good in a packed cinema screen, but otherwise I would say possibly not one that you absolutely have to see at the cinema. So use that advice as you will, but if you can go and see it on the cheap, it's, for free / £2.50, £5, go and see it. It's good. It's enjoyable, but you can definitely wait till it comes out on the box if you want to. So I hope you found this review useful. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you on the next review. Goodbye.